I'm Kathy Finley. I'm the Executive Director of the Organization of American Historians, and this afternoon we will be honoring those who have won awards or prizes for their scholarship, their teaching, and their filmmaking. This will be followed by the culmination of our 108th annual meeting, the Presidential Address by Patty Limerick. But before we begin our awards ceremony, I would like us to pause and remember those colleagues who are no longer with us. This past year, we lost the following OAH members: Felix Armfield, Gordon Morris Bakken, Terry D. Billhartz, Dixon Davies Bruce, James McGregor Burns, Jack Chatfield, Carolyn Cox, Carl N. Degler, Durwood Dunn, Conrad J. Enghelder, Victor R. Green, Michael B. Katz, Doris E. King, William D. Little, George P. Oliver, Clement Alexander Price, Donald E. Reed, David J. Roscoe, Mark Ross, John E. Saffel, Janelle Warren Findley, and John Wolverton. This list was compiled as of April 8th, 2015, and we realized that in compiling this list, we may have not been informed of the passing of some of our members. If someone has been left off this list, we apologize for it, and we ask that you send the names into our office. Oh, Stanley, okay, I'm sorry. I'm adding Stanley Cutler. I'm sorry, he was missed on the list. But anyway, if anyone's been left off, we apologize. Please contact us. She just contacted me now about adding, and we will read the names at the next meeting, and it'll be included in next year's ceremony. With that said, I would like to now present to you the OAH President-elect, John Butler, and John will begin the award ceremony.
The Organization of American Historians sponsors awards and prizes given in recognition of scholarly and professional achievements in the field of American history. At this time, I'm going to present the awards and prizes for 2015. But first, before I do that, I want to make sure that you understand and acknowledge the many award and prize committee members who have generously given their time and their expertise. They are listed in the program before you, along with the excerpts from their report. And I would like to thank all of them for the many hours of hard work and their difficult decisions in awarding these prizes. And I want to make sure that we all understand the work of these committees. Some committees receive 100 books or more. Some committees look at many articles. This takes a great deal of time, it takes a great deal of thought, it takes a great sense of fairness and an appreciation for the wide work of many people, and they have to winnow that down to a prize. And so there is wonderful work being done in our profession. These committees try to figure out what would they recognize, but in awarding a single prize, I think they also recognize the whole profession and the people who have written over the past calendar year. And so I would like to have you acknowledge the work of these committees with a round of applause, please. In addition, I would just like to say a word about the kind of prizes and awards we are given. We have a duty in our profession to both recognize what the United States is and how we understand that. And those who administer, those who write books, those who write articles, those who teach American history, those who teach American history at the elementary and secondary level, in community colleges, in four-year colleges, in research universities, produce and consume history that we give to millions of people. And this kind of work that we are doing today recognizes what we take to be the best in that work. And it isn't only to signal a prize given to a single person, but it's to signal the process by which we produce and consume an intelligent, informed knowledge of our society and our history stretching back centuries. And so the kind of people and awards that you're going to honor this afternoon represent all of that work. It represents the achievement of yesterday and today, but I would like to also to say it represents our future. Many of the people who are going to be on this stage are the very people who are going to be continuing to produce all this work in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And so we look forward in honoring the people on our stage this afternoon, and we also look back at the work that has long distinguished American history. We're going to start this afternoon with a new prize. And when we give a new prize in the Organization of American Historians, we do a little extra. That is, we have those who have created the prize, and we have the committee member who is going to describe the prize to us. And we have that this afternoon, and that is the Mary Jurisch Nicholas Prize in U.S. Women's and/or Gender History, which will be given annually thanks to a generous gift to endow this prize from Alexandra M. Nicholas. And at this time, I would like to invite Dr. Nicholas and any of the award committee members who are present to join me for the presentation of the award. Please. Go ahead. Ms. Nicholas, would you like to
do my
start?
little? Okay. All right. Good afternoon. At first, I was reluctant to accept the OAH invitation to speak today, but after some thought, I realized this would be the only opportunity I would have to thank Alice Kessler Harris, Kathy Finley, and the OAH publicly for their support and guidance in creating the Mary Jurisch Nicholas Prize in U.S. Women's and/or Gender History. Mary Jurisch Nicholas is my almost 95-year-old mom. She is the child of Serbian immigrants who came to the United States in the Progressive Era, not knowing one word of English. Mom grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. The town residents were mostly immigrants. The town tax base was so small, the place could not afford to build a public library, but did have public schools. Mom was punished in school for speaking her native language. The high school she attended burned down. The town could not afford to build another one. So she had to double up with students attending another school. That meant she could only attend high school half days. To this day, she wishes she had a full high school education. Mom had aspirations to be a career woman after high school graduation, but she never fulfilled them because she grew up in a generation of women whose opportunities were limited by the historical circumstances in which they lived. I've wanted to honor my mother in some way for quite some time, but it took me a while to figure out a way to do this. I am a life member of the OAH, but I was puzzled by the fact that the OAH had no prize for the best book in U.S. women's and/or gender history. So it seemed the establishment of a prize in my mom's name would be a good way to honor her and support an academic field and a professional organization in history in which I have deep and long-lasting interest. As corny as it may sound, The OAH is making history today with the announcement of the first winner of the Mary Jurich Nicholas Prize in U.S. women's and/or gender history. So my mother and I thank you, and selected to receive the inaugural award is Lisa Marguerite Tatro of Carnegie Mellon University, The Myth of Seneca Falls, Memory and the Women's Suffrage Movement, 1848 to 1898, the University of North Carolina Press. So Lisa.
On behalf of the committee awarding this first prize, I'd just like to say that we had an astonishing and stunning selection of books to choose from, so it was a real honor to participate. And I also have to say that I think when you get the email from the president asking you to be on a book prize, lots of people hesitate because they know how much work it is. But I think I'm right in saying that pretty much everybody jumped at this chance to be part of this first prize. I know I did. So thank you very much for the endowment and for establishing this prize.
Mary, do you want to come up, Sandra? There, oh, yes, photo op. Where do you want? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Also new this year is the Stanton Horton Award for Excellence in National Park Service History. This award recognizes the excellence in historical projects for, by, and with the National Park Service, and is intended to honor projects that make the National Park Service exemplary in promoting civic dialogue about and appreciation of American history. At this time, I would like to invite members of the committee to join me for the presentation of the award. So Eola Dance and David Glassberg are here to present the award with me, and I now wish to read the two award citations. Appointed by President Barack Obama to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation in 2014, Mr. Robert G. Stanton served for almost 4 decades in the National Park Service, leading the organization in preservation and interpretation of natural and cultural resources significant to the history and the landscape of the United States. Previously a senior advisor to the Secretary of the Department of Interior, Stanton advised milestone designations of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial and several new national monuments to include Fort Monroe, Harriet Tubman, and Charles Young. Stanton was the first African American to be appointed as the director of the National Park Service, serving that position from 1997 to 2001. As director, Stanton advocated for diversity and inclusion, supporting recruitment of students from historically black colleges and universities, and career development for minorities, especially women. Mr. Stanton made a significant impact in shaping the vision for the next century of preservation as the National Park Service celebrates 100 years of service by instituting programs to ensure recognition of the diversity of peoples, places, and cultures that contributed to our shared heritage in the history of the United States. Mr. Stanton is not able to be here this afternoon, and so I will now move to the description of the award for James Oliver Horton, and then we will present the prizes themselves. James Oliver Horton is the Benjamin Banneker Professor of American Studies and History at George Washington University and Historian Emeritus of the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History. In 1993, he was appointed by Secretary of the Interior Bruce Babbitt to serve on the National Park System Advisory Board, and in 1996 he was elected board chair. In 1994 and 5, he served as the senior advisor on historical interpretation and public education for the director of the National Park Service. Among his publications exploring how American history is presented in National Park Service museums and historic sites is Slavery and Public History, the Tough Stuff of American Memory, published in 2006, co-edited with Lois Horton. Author of many distinguished histories, a Pulitzer Prize nominee and recipient of many awards, Professor Horton also served as president of the Organization of American Historians from 2004 to 2005. And I would like to ask Lois Horton to come to the stage now and join us for the presentation of the first Stanton Horton Award. Selected to receive the inaugural award is the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom, Diane Miller, Primary Project Director.
I just have a few things to say on behalf of the award committee, and actually my fellow award committee member, Yola Dance, will also say a few words. The first is I wanted to say that the third member of our committee, Joan Zenson, who actually chaired the committee, can't be here today because along with many other OAH members who are public historians and are very loyal members of this organization, she's attending the NCPH meeting that's taking place the same weekend in Nashville. I'm especially proud as a longtime OAH member also to be able to say that this is only one of 2 awards that the OAH gives to honor historical scholarship that appears in a form other than a book. And as committee members, we were working through blueprints of exhibits. We were working through a lot of other really interesting kinds of documents that really do deserve recognition by professional historians as excellent historical scholarship. So I'm very proud that the OAH is doing that. And of course, this also is an award that's honoring scholarships. It's done by historians who work for the public, for the National Park Service. So we're really delighted about that in general. And specifically, the Network to Freedom project, which has given over $2 million since 1998, is an extraordinary project, and you can read about it in the program. But one of the things about it that we really think is so valuable is that you think of National Park Service, you think of big national parks. And this is a program that really provided tremendous amounts of aid to grassroots historical organizations all over. And it's really a model for community engagement and really where the National Park Service has been heading, and they're to be applauded for continuing to head that way. So I'm going to knock off and let Yola finish up. Thank you.
Well, I bring greetings to you from the National Park Service, and thanks to OAH for collaboration on this very important recognition in history and civic engagement. As noted in the program, we have an honorable mention, and that goes to Rosie the Riveter, World War II National Historical Park, for their exhibit chronicling the experiences of Rosies. And this updated exhibit expands the dialogue of the skills that the women had and exhibited on the home front in manufacturing and engineering during World War II. As the National Park Service celebrates 100 years of service and preservation and education. We encourage you to find your park, and we hope that you will consider Rosie as one of those places that you visit. Thank you.
The OAH gives the Roy Rosenzweig Distinguished Service Award to an individual or individuals whose contributions have significantly enriched our understanding and appreciation of American history. The Organization of American Historians confers the 2015 Roy Rosenzweig Distinguished Service Award on Thomas Bender of New York University and the late Michael B. Katz, University of Pennsylvania. And I will first read the citation for Tom Bender, and I will ask Tom to come up right now. Exactly. Tom Bender has had a long and distinguished career as an outstanding historian whose scholarship has greatly influenced the fields of U.S. intellectual, cultural, urban, and transnational histories. Bender has also contributed in fundamental ways to the promotion of history and the humanities in general. He is among a small cadre of U.S. historians of his generation who have developed reputations as public intellectuals. Bender received his B.A. degree from the University of Santa Clara and his M.A. and Ph.D. degrees from the University of California, Davis. He began his career as an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, before taking up his current position at New York University, where he has taught since 1974. From 1977 through 1982, he was the Samuel Rudin Professor of the Humanities, and in 1982, he was named University Professor of the Humanities. He has authored 6 books, edited or co-edited 11 others, and has published dozens of articles and essays in scholarly journals and anthologies. Since early in his career, Bender has contributed in myriad ways to public history and to the promotion of the humanities. He was a member of the New York State Council for the Humanities from 1989 to 1996, and he served as chair from 1993 to 1995. Bender was also a member of the New York Public Library Humanities Advisory Council during the 1990s. He was a fellow of the New York Institute for the Humanities from 1977 through 1989. Since 1995, in addition, he has been an advisory board member for the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. Bender's work as a public intellectual has appeared in The Nation, Dissent, The Chronicle of Higher Education, Democracy, and other magazines and newspapers. His most recent efforts have been directed toward internationalizing American history by placing it in a global context. Toward this end, he convened 2 conferences in Italy and produced the widely read La Pietra Report. His most recent book, A Nation Among Nations, America's Place in the World, in World History, published in 2006, is an example of Bender's intellectual range and his role in promoting a greater understanding of the American experience in comparative international contexts. We congratulate Professor Bender.
I will be short, but I do want to say a few things. I deeply appreciate this honor on the face of it, but also because the name it carries. Roy Rosenzweig was a friend, who enriched the lives of all people who knew him, and the discipline as well. There's a certain kind of symmetry in this award at this time. In 1974, the year I was hired by NYU, I was also honored at the OAH meeting in Denver that year with the Frederick Jackson Turner Prize, which became my book, Toward an Urban Vision. Now in St. Louis, in my last semester of teaching, I'm honored again by this organization. Between these 2 honors, there were dozens of annual meetings and more than 150 issues of the Journal of American History, all of which I read from page, cover to cover. And there's a third important connection, it's already been mentioned, between the OAH and me. That is the La Pietra Project. As a member of the executive committee of the OAH, at a time when the leadership, it was actually my first meeting, the first meeting I attended, we're quite concerned about the relations or the non-relations with international scholars of the United States. And I said, well, I have an idea, and that idea became the NYU OAH Initiative on Internationalizing American History. Without that partnership, which was facilitated by the then president, Linda Kerber, who was really wonderfully helpful and supportive with the idea, and the advice of David Thalen, who was at that time the editor of the Journal of American History, I don't think it could have had the impact that it did. So there is a professional lesson. Listen, engagement with the OAH makes things happen. Anyway, I want to give my thanks again. I also want to say just one thing about Michael Katz, who was also a friend and a terrific scholar and another person who really engaged with issues of public significance. And we have a little bond. We discovered long ago that there was one very eccentric, brilliant professor who was I think he was Michael's advisor. I only had a course from him that was a peculiar kind of wonderful bond between us. So thank you.
The second Rosenzweig Award is awarded to Michael B. Katz, Walter H. Annenberg Professor of History at the University of Pennsylvania, who passed away in August 2014. He was one of the greatest historians of his generation. The 19 letters of nomination submitted by colleagues on his behalf for the Rosenzweig Award were stunning in the praise and admiration for Katz as a scholar, as a mentor, as a teacher, and public intellectual who greatly influenced through his writings and advocacy discourses about poverty, education, and welfare in America. Katz's scholarship, which spanned over 5 decades, constitutes a fundamental contribution to American history. Several of his books are classic examples in the discipline. The Irony of Early School Reform, In the Shadow of the Poorhouse, The Undeserving Poor, Improving Poor People, and Why Don't American Cities Burn are foundational books for understanding the origins of inequality in the United States. His long career devoted to dealing with critical social issues in American history won him great praise and recognition, including a Spencer Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award, an election to the American Philosophical Society and the Society of American Historians. In 1992, Pennsylvania Governor Robert P. Casey appointed him to the task force to reduce welfare dependency. His work was supported by the Social Science Research Council, the Guggenheim Foundation, and numerous other foundations. Educated at Harvard University, Katz trained dozens of historians at the University of Pennsylvania for successful careers in higher education. Admired by students and peers alike, Katz was an inspirational educator and committed citizen of the nation. He was deeply devoted to undergraduate studies and courses at Penn, serving as the director of the Urban Studies program for many years. Katz left a great legacy as a pioneering historian, engaging teacher and mentor, and public intellectual. Etta Katz is not able to be here with us today. Accepting the award on her behalf is Thomas J. Segru of the University of Pennsylvania History Department.
I'm honored to receive the Roy Rosenzweig Award on behalf of my late colleague, Michael Katz, and my dear friend, Michael Katz. I can think of few people more deserving of the Rosenzweig Award. Michael was one of the most rigorous social historians of our time, a pioneer of quantitative methods, but someone who was not a scholar who operated in a narrow trench. He made major contributions to the history of education, to the history of welfare, to the history of poverty, class, and inequality, to urban history, and in his most recent scholarship that he was just beginning in the few years before he passed, immigration history. Michael was not only a great historian, but he was an engaged scholar, someone who believed in drawing connections between his work as a historian and the problems of injustice and inequality in our society today. Michael, for those of you who knew him and for those of you who don't, was a quiet man, intellectual, introspective, sometimes introverted, but he wrote with an extraordinary passion about the issues. Sometimes his work was angry, which is not something one sees in a lot of historical scholarship. He cared deeply about the implications of historical scholarship for the world in which we live today. He did not draw a bright line between past and present, but he did not use history as propaganda, but rather as a way of shedding light on our situation now and how we can move beyond it. He was perennially optimistic. Finally, Michael was an exceedingly generous teacher and mentor. Michael founded Penn's Urban Studies program, one of the most innovative in the country, connecting Penn undergraduates and later graduate students with the broader community in which they live. Michael was an extraordinary mentor to dozens of graduate students, and he was deeply loyal. He went to bat for them. He read their work and turned it around within usually a night, really quite extraordinary, and was really a great mentor for them. And he provided advice and support and offered opportunities for scholars across the profession, particularly those at the very beginning stages of their career, including doing something that relatively few historians do, but which made Michael particularly proud, which is collaborating and co-authoring on many scholarly articles and books as well. On behalf of Michael's family, I want to thank the Roy Rosenzweig Committee for giving him this award, and I only wish he were here to receive it today. Thank you.
The OAH gives the Friend of History Award to an institution or organization or an individual working primarily outside college or university settings for outstanding support of historical research, the public presentation of American history, or the work of the OAH. The Organization of American Historians is honored to present its 2015 Friend of History Award to Colin G Campbell, Chairman Emeritus, Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, for his energizing leadership as president of Colonial Williamsburg from 2000 to 2014. Campbell accepted the challenge of directing Colonial Williamsburg's renewed efforts to amplify the conservation of one of America's premier and also challenging historical sites. Deepen the historical experience for thousands of visitors trooping to Williamsburg in person, and embrace millions of 21st century visitors now arriving by the internet. Campbell reaffirmed Colonial Williamsburg's commitment to a history that connects the past to contemporary American life and citizenship. The revolutionary city focus developed under his leadership treats the historic town and revolutionary experience as opportunities to engage political and social controversies embedded in colonial and revolutionary societies that still resonate today. Street theater performances engage the English and European settler experience, realities of enslaved and free African life, the vivid presentation of Native Americans throughout 18th century America, political differences brought into the revolutionary crisis, the treatment of women, and tensions between planters and farmers in revolutionary era Virginia are all on display in Colonial Williamsburg. Challenged by its own success in attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors yearly, Colonial Williamsburg must maintain and enhance no less than 600 reconstructed, renovated, or restored 18th century structures and 300 acres of streets, gardens, pastures, and working areas. Campbell led the development of new capital improvements and maintenance programs supported through an expanded national fund raised to ensure the site's continuing attractiveness to future visitors. Campbell's initiatives eagerly thrust Colonial Williamsburg into the internet world. Its electronic field trips now bring 18th century Williamsburg alive to millions through television programs in American history so absorbing that they have won 13 Emmy Awards in the last decade. Well, let's all clap for that. Its weekly podcasts and vodcasts featuring interpreters, curators, and the full spectrum of 18th century Williamsburg's population, backed by Colonial Williamsburg's exceptional staff of professional historians, can be downloaded or viewed online and draw more than 5 million viewers each year. An online game called RevQuest, Saving the Revolution, allows gamers to collect clues explaining the revolution's dynamics and dangers. These have in turn strengthened Colonial Williamsburg's Teachers Institute, now in its 25th year, and led to an interactive digital curriculum, The Idea of America, encapsulating Williamsburg within the broad dynamics of American history for a new generation of students and teachers. Campbell also led Colonial Williamsburg into active collaborations with other institutions, among them the National Park Service, the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, Preservation Virginia, Historic Jamestown, and Washington's Center for Strategic and International Studies, as well as the Omohundro Institute of Early American History and Culture, which Colonial Williamsburg supports jointly with the College of William and Mary. The Organization of American Historians is deeply grateful for Colin Campbell's leadership at Colonial Williamsburg. He exemplifies what it means to be a friend of history, and we are honored to present the OAH Friend of History Award to him.
Thank you very much, Professor Butler. I'm proud to accept this Friend of History Award from this group of professional historians, and so I thank you all. As a lifelong friend of history, it's especially meaningful to me that the Organization of American Historians would recognize my commitment to the field and my work at Colonial Williamsburg in this manner. Colonial Williamsburg's long-standing engagement with history, education, and scholarship is well known and widely appreciated. It has been a privilege to help advance that mission so that the future may continue to learn from the past. That was the simple but powerful message of our founder, John D. Rockefeller Jr., and it resonates nearly 90 years later. The good work of the members of this organization notwithstanding, I worry a lot that our fellow citizens know too little of their antecedents, too little of the heroics, too little of the failures, too little of the struggles and the accomplishments along the way. And I worry a lot that these subjects do not receive the priority attention they deserve in our schools. History tells us that the basic issues of self-governance, of personal liberty and civic responsibility, of government structure and public outcomes animated 18th century Williamsburg. And we know that these issues are immediate in our own time as well, just as the trials of our founding leaders are immediate in our own time. Making that point of the contemporary relevance of our national history is a challenge for historians and for friends of history alike. To me, this means that, that your scholarship and teaching has never been more important, nor has the work at countless historic sites, including Colonial Williamsburg, that strive to complement your efforts and to bring history alive. The people who make their livelihood at these sites are all friends of history. I greatly appreciate this recognition of one among the many committed to that cause. Thank you all very much.
Now, I would like to present the book, dissertation, article, teaching, and film prizes and other awards for 2015. As I announce the awards, I will ask the winners to come forward and receive their awards from President Limerick. If any honorable mention recipients are in the audience, please stand as your name is called from the audience. And I invite the audience to please read the citations in the award booklet that you will have found on the seats in which you are sitting. We are not going to read the citations. We are going to present the awards. And please then, you can multitask. You can hear the award announced and read the citation in the booklet, and we will proceed with the first award. The Frederick Jackson Turner Award is given annually for an author's first scholarly book dealing with some aspect of American history. And the Lawrence W. Levine Award is given annually for the best book in American cultural history. This year, both the Turner and the Levine committees have selected a single book, Allison Hobbs of Stanford University, A Chosen Exile, A History of Racial Passing in American Life, published by Harvard University Press. The Turner Committee also chose 3 books to receive honorable mention, and if the authors are here, I would ask them to stand and ask you to applause. Jamie Cole Cohen, George Washington University, for a book, The Open Mind, Cold War Politics and the Sciences of Human Nature, published by the University of Chicago Press. Catherine C. Mooney, Florida State University, Racehorse Men, How Slavery and Freedom Were Made at the Racetrack, published by Harvard University Press. And Kyle G. Volk, University of Montana, Moral Minorities and the Making of American Democracy, published by Oxford University Press. If you are here, would you please stand?
They were standing and I was pointing, so.
Okay. The Merle G Currie Award is given each year for the best books published in American intellectual history and American social history. This year, the awards go to, in intellectual history, Kyle G. Volk, University of Montana. Moral Minorities and the Making of American Democracy, published by Oxford University Press.
He's chatting over here.
Great. And in social history, the Merle Curie Award is given to Cornelia H. Dayton, University of Connecticut, and Sharon V. Salinger, University of California, Irvine, for their book, Robert Love's Warnings, Searching for Strangers in Colonial Boston, published by the University of Pennsylvania Press. The Ray Allen Billington Prize is given every 2 years for the best book in American frontier history, which is defined broadly to include the pioneer periods of all geographical areas and comparisons between American frontiers and others. The winner of this year's prize is Jared Farmer, Stony Brook University, Trees in Paradise, A California History, W.W. Norton and Company. And I understand that Professor Farmer is not able to be here, but please give him a round of applause. The Avery O. Craven Award is given annually for the most original book on the coming of the Civil War years, or the era of Reconstruction, with the exception of works of purely military history. This year, the committee chose Edward E. Baptist, Cornell University, for his book, The Half Has Never Been Told, Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism, published by Basic Books. The James A. Rowley Prize is given annually for the best book dealing with the history of race relations in the United States. This year, the committee chose Daniel Berger, University of Washington, Bothell, Captive Nation, Black Prison Organizing in the Civil Rights Era, published by the University of North Carolina Press. I understand that Professor Berger is also not able to be here this afternoon, and so I ask you all please to give him a nice round of applause. The Willie Paul Adams Award is given every 2 years for the best book on American history published in a foreign language. The committee chose Jürgen Markschut, Erfurt University, Governing Through the Family, Fatherhood and Families in American History Since 1770, published by Campus Verlag. The LSW Holi Prize is given annually for the best book-length historical study of the political economy, politics, or institutions of the United States in its domestic or international affairs from the Civil War to the present. Selected for the prize this year is Alan McPherson, University of Oklahoma, The Invaded: How Latin Americans and Their Allies Fought and Ended U.S. Occupations, published by Oxford University Press. The Liberty Legacy Foundation Award is given annually for the best book by historian on the civil rights struggle from the beginnings of the nation to the present. This year, the award goes to N.D.B. Connolly, Johns Hopkins University, A World More Concrete: Real Estate and the Making of Jim Crow South Florida, published by the University of Chicago Press. The Darlene Clark Hine Award is given annually for the best book in African Americans, women's, and general history. The committee chose Carsonia Wise Whitehead, Loyola University, Maryland, for her book Notes from a Colored Girl: The Civil War Pocket Diaries of Emily Frances Davis, published by the University of South Carolina Press. The David Montgomery Award is given annually with co-sponsorship by the Labor and Working Class History Association for the best book on a topic in American labor and working class history. Receiving this year's award is Chantal Norgard, an independent scholar, for her book Seasons of Change: Labor, Treaty Rights, and the Ojibwe Nationhood, published by the University of North Carolina Press. And I understand that Miss Norgard was caught in the 14 inches of snow that descended on Denver yesterday and is not able to be here, but let's give her an extra round of applause. Selected to receive honorable mention is Brian Rouleau of Texas A&M University for his book, With Sails Whitening Every Sea, Mariners and the Making of an American Maritime Empire, published by Cornell University Press. And if Professor Rouleau is here, let's all give him a round of applause anyway, even if he is or isn't. The Lerner Scott Prize is given annually for the best doctoral dissertation in U.S. women's history. This year's winner is Jessica Wilkerson of the University of Mississippi for her dissertation, Where Movements Meet, From the War on Poverty to Grassroots Feminism in the Appalachian South, awarded by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Her advisor was Jacqueline Dowd Hall. Selected to receive honorable mention is Keisha N. Blaine, Pennsylvania State University, for her dissertation, the freedom of the Race, Black Women, and the Practices of Nationalism, 1929 to 1945, awarded at Princeton University, when her advisor was Tara W. Hunter. And if Professor Blaine is here, let's give her a nice round of applause. The next two awards are related to the Journal of American History. The Louis Pelzer Memorial Prize is given annually for the best essay in American history by a graduate student. The winner this year is Christopher M. Florio of Princeton University for his article, From Poverty to Slavery, Abolitionists, Overseers, and the Global Struggle for Labor in India. The Bingley Stevenson Award is given annually for the best article that appeared in the Journal of American History during the preceding calendar year. The committee chose James D. Rice, State University of New York at Plattsburgh, for his article, Bacon's Rebellion in Indian Country, which was published in December 2014. For many of the following awards, we will ask the recipients to stand, and we would like to acknowledge them with a round of applause. The Huggins Quarles Award is given annually to one or two graduate students of color to assist them with expenses related to travel to research collections for the completion of the PhD degree. The committee selected two winners this year, Nancy O. Gallman at the University of California, Davis, for her dissertation, American Constitutions, Life, Liberty, and the Property in Colonial East Florida, and Farina King, Arizona State University, for her dissertation, The Journey of Diné Students in Four Directions. Would they please stand? The Mary K. Bondsteel Kakao Award for the year is given annually for contributions made by pre-collegiate teachers to improve history education within the field of American history. Selected for this year's award is Frank M. Caffarella of Cosgrove Middle School, Spenceport, New York. If Mr. Caffarella is here, would you please come to the stage? And please applaud. The Eric Barnell Award is given annually for outstanding programming on television or in documentary films concerned with American history, the study of American history, and/or the promotion of American history. This year, the committee chose The Roosevelts, An Intimate History, a co-production of Florentine Films and WETA, Washington, D.C. The director was Ken Burns, and the producers were Paul Brines, Pam Tabriti Balcom, and Ken Burns. Mr. Burns is not able to attend the meeting, but I would ask you to please applaud for his award. And the award is given for an honorable mention, is also given for the documentary film 1971. The director and producer was Johanna Hamilton. The producers were Marilyn Ness and Kate Chavigny. Associate producer Danielle Varga. Maximum Pictures and Fork Films in a co-production with the independent television service ITVS in association with Big Mouth Productions, Motto Pictures, Candescent Films, and the Ford Foundation Just Films. And please acknowledge them with a round of applause. The next awards are for the OAH's international residencies. If the recipients are present, please stand for audience recognition as your name is called. And I would ask that the audience please hold the applause until all of those in the group have been named. The OAH and Japanese Association for American Studies, with the generous support of the Japan-United States Friendship Commission, select 2 U.S. historians to spend 2 weeks at Japanese universities giving lectures, seminars, advising students and researchers interested in the American past, and joining in the collegiality of that host institution. It is part of an exchange program that also brings Japanese graduate students who are studying in the United States to the OAH annual meeting. Chosen as for residencies in 2015 are Kevin C. Murphy, of the University of the Sciences, whose residency will be at Kobe University on U.S. cultural and social history and U.S.-Japan relations, and Greg University at the University of Quebec in Montreal, whose residency will be at Waseda University on American history and U.S. political history. And if they are here, please stand so we can applaud for you. Three Japanese students studying in the United States were selected to receive funding to attend this year's OAH annual meeting. They are Satomi Minowa, who's going to be at the University of Delaware, Atsuko Shinagawa Okiwa, American University, and Yushi Yamakaze, who will study at the University of Southern California. Please applaud for them, and please stand if you are here. Thanks to a generous grant from the Fritz Thyssen Foundation, the OAH is pleased to award the German Residency Program in American History at the University of Tübingen. The resident scholar will offer a seminar on a U.S. history topic of his or her design. Selected to receive the 2015 residency is James D. Rice, State University of New York at Plattsburgh. Mr. Rice? Thanks to a generous grant from the Ford Foundation, the OAH and the American History Research Association of China are pleased to continue their teaching seminars in the People's Republic of China. 3 U.S. scholars will participate at Renmin University of China this year, and they will host this year's seminars there. As part of the exchange program, 3 Chinese scholars are provided with the opportunity to do research in the United States at select universities. Chosen to teach in the residency program this year are Thomas H. Cox of Sam Houston University, Julia L. Fulks of the New School, and Raul Ramos of the University of Houston. If you are here, please stand and let's all applaud for them. Three Chinese scholars were selected to receive funding to attend the 2015 OAH annual meeting and spend time in residence at a U.S. university following the meeting. They are Hu Xiaozhen of the China University of Political Science and Law, who will be hosted by the Penn Program on Democracy, Citizenship, and the Constitution at the University of Pennsylvania and the National Constitution Center. Lu Wenshao of Shanghai Normal University was hosted by Hunter College, City of New York, and Yang Zhenchen of Northeast Normal University, hosted by the University of California at San Diego. Please stand if you are here, and excellent. The OAH Immigration and Ethnic History Society John Hyam travel grants are for graduate students to be used toward costs in attending the OAH and IEHS annual meeting. Thanks to the generosity of William L. and Carol B. Joyce, the OAH and the IEHS are pleased to continue offering the program. Grants were presented at the IEH dinner Friday evening. If the recipients are present, please stand, and they are Preston McBride of the University of California at Los Angeles, who is writing on the subject, "We Were Always Sick, Indian Health at Sherman Institute and Carlisle Indian Industrial School, 1879 to 1929. Daniel Morales of Columbia University for a dissertation, "The Making of Mexican America, Industrialization, Revolution, and the Rise of Mass Migration, 1900 to 1940. And Adrienne A. Winans of Ohio University for a dissertation on Chinese students in the Midwest, Women and Transnational Mobility, 1916 to 1931. Please stand so we can applaud for you. The Samuel and Marion Merrill Graduate Student Travel Grants, supported by a bequest from the Merrill Trust, help sponsor the travel-related costs of graduate students who are confirmed as participants on the OAH conference program and will incur expenses at traveling to the annual meeting. Recipients of the 2015 Merrill grants are Gregory Ablavsky of the University of Pennsylvania Law School, who's giving a paper on native citizenship, sovereignty, and the law of nations in the New Republic. Delia Fernandez of Ohio State University for the Latino turn, Is There a Future for Chicano and Puerto Rican Histories? Amanda Huguet, Duke University for a paper, Gendered Injustice, Feminism, Labor, and the Movement for Imprisoned Women's Rights in North Carolina, and William S. Kaiser, Arizona State University, for a paper on debt peonage in judicial and political transition, unfree labor in territorial New Mexico and the post-war South, and Claire H. Rydell, Stanford University, for a paper on the American political tradition reconsidered, Locke's, Marx, and the silencing of Mill. Would you please all stand so we can applaud for you? The President's Travel Fund for Emerging Historians is given for the first time this year to provide travel stipends for graduate students and recent PhDs in history whose papers, panels, or sessions have been accepted by the OAH Program Committee for inclusion on the annual meeting program. Receiving the inaugural grants this year are William Gao, University of California, Berkeley, Performing the Pacific War, Chinese-American Actors, Hollywood, and the Politics of Japanese-American Incarceration, 1937 to 1945. Alyssa M. Ribeiro, University of California, Los Angeles. We Went to Make an Alliance, Puerto Rican and Black Politics in North Philadelphia, the 1960s to the 70s. Heather Sinclair, University of Texas at El Paso, for Borders, Bodies, and Babies, the Racialization of Midwifery in the Home Birth and U.S.-Mexican Borderlands, 1922 to 1942, and Tao Wai, Stony Brook University, Sunni, British dissenters, Dutch radicals, and the radical networks in the Atlantic. World, the case of Henry Lawrence, 1779 to 1784, and Jean Zubovich, University of California, Berkeley, for a paper, The New Deal and Grassroots Democracy. Please stand and we will applaud for you. As our organization looks forward to great things in the coming year, allow me to recognize the individuals who volunteer as OAH Distinguished Lecturers. As you may know, the lectureship program was established 30 years ago by OAH President Gerda Lerner and continues today to offer valuable outreach for our discipline, as well as revenue for the organization. 46 outstanding historians have agreed to join the roster for the coming year. You will find their names in the awards program. They join the more than 400 other outstanding historians who are already serving as OAH distinguished lecturers. We'll all, not just the new OAH distinguished lecturers, but all OAH distinguished lecturers who are in the audience, please stand, and we would like to applaud for you. As president-elect and an OAH lecturer myself, I welcome the new appointees to the program and thank you all. I encourage anyone who plans to host a guest speaker or lecture series at your college or university or any other institution, and all institutions in the coming year, to convert that visit to an OAH lecturer distinguished lecturer appointment, and they will, funds will then come to the OAH, and we would appreciate that very much. Please also recognize me in recognizing the 50-year members of the organization. The 50-year members whom we are aware are attending the meeting this year are Margaret Connell Sass, Frank Allen Coombs, and Reinhard O. Johnson, and we would ask you to please stand so we can acknowledge your 50 years of membership, and if we have missed anyone, please stand as well. Now we are going to take a very relatively brief break before we introduce President Patricia Nelson Limerick for her presidential address. So please don't go anywhere except to talk with each other. We'll just take a brief break, and then we will have the presidential address. Thank you very much.